Have you ever heard of Elora Vance? Elora painted the dead. She didn't work from photographs. Oh no. Her subjects were the voices that whispered to her in the dead of night, the restless spirits who needed to be seen one last time. Her studio was a sanctuary for ghosts, a place where their faded memories could be brought back to life in vibrant color. One dreary evening, a package arrived. It was from a local antiques dealer, a man who knew of Elora's peculiar talent. Inside was an old canvas, stretched over a warped wooden frame. It was yellowed with age, and the fabric felt brittle beneath her fingertips. The moment she touched it, a new voice entered her mind. It was different from the others. It was quiet, insidious, a cold whisper that slithered into her ear. It said, "Bring them to me." Elora tried to dismiss it. She was used to voices, but this one felt wrong. It wasn't a soul asking for remembrance. It was a presence, hungry and demanding. She set the canvas aside, hoping to ignore it, but the whisper returned, night after night, a constant, chilling murmur in the silence of her studio. It didn't want a story told. It wanted faces. It craved the visages of the dead. The days grew colder, and the whisper grew louder, more insistent. Elora's usual ghostly clients fell silent, as if terrified of this new presence. Her inspiration dried up. She couldn't paint. She could only listen to the canvas's relentless demand. Faces. Give me faces. Then, one rain-lashed afternoon, a man appeared at her studio door. He was drenched, his face pale and etched with desperation. He clutched a worn photograph, its edges frayed. He explained that it was a picture of his sister, who had vanished years ago. He said no one remembered what she looked like anymore. Their memories of her had just faded away. He pushed the photograph into Elora's hands. The woman's face was a blur, a smudge of light and shadow, as if it had been deliberately erased from existence. It was an impossible request. How could she paint a face she couldn't see? But the man's eyes were filled with such profound grief, such pleading, that Elora found herself agreeing. He just wanted to see his sister one more time. Elora took the new commission as a challenge, a way to break the creative block the whispering canvas had imposed on her. She set up a fresh easel, but as she reached for her charcoal, a strange compulsion took hold of her. Her hand moved, not towards her clean new canvas, but towards the old, yellowed one from the antiques dealer. She didn't know why, but she felt this was the face the canvas had been waiting for. She placed the canvas on the easel. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with anticipation. She picked up her pencil, its sharp point hovering just inches from the fabric. As the graphite touched the canvas, the whisper that had haunted her for weeks exploded into a deafening scream. It wasn't just in her head anymore. It filled the entire room, rattling the jars of paint on her shelves. A voice, raw and guttural, roared from the very fibers of the canvas. "Draw me. Let me out." Elora stumbled back, dropping her pencil. Her heart hammered against her ribs. But then, something impossible happened. On the surface of the blank canvas, a thin black line appeared, sketching itself into existence. Then, another, and another. They moved with an unholy speed, like spiders weaving a web. Before her terrified eyes, a face began to form. Two eyes opened. They weren't paint. They were dark, glistening orbs that blinked slowly, deliberately. They scanned the room before locking onto her. A pair of lips formed, thin and pale. They twitched, then parted, and a faint, shallow breath fogged the air in front of the painting. The woman on the canvas was alive. A sudden chill swept through the studio. Elora felt a presence behind her, the distinct feeling of someone watching over her shoulder. She spun around, but the room was empty. The door was still locked, yet she heard it. The soft, unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. An icy touch grazed the back of her neck, and the whisper returned, now right beside her ear, intimate and terrifying. "Finish me." Terror gave her strength. Elora fled her studio, leaving the breathing painting behind. She ran to the library, her mind racing. Who was this woman? Who was this entity trapped in the canvas? She spent hours frantically searching through old newspapers and town records, looking for any mention of a woman who had simply vanished, her face forgotten by everyone. Finally, she found it. A small, overlooked article from decades ago about a local woman who had disappeared without a trace. Her name was Annalise. The report mentioned strange behavior before she vanished. Annalise had become terrified of her own reflection. She told her family that the woman in the mirror wasn't her. She claimed her reflection was changing, moving on its own, and that it wanted to escape. She was last seen staring into a mirror, screaming. Elora's blood ran cold. The reflection wanted to escape. The woman on the canvas wanted out. She knew she had to go back. She had to destroy it. When she returned to her studio, the painting was different. The face was more defined, more solid. Annalise's eyes followed Elora as she walked across the room. Her painted mouth, which had been a neutral line, was now stretched into a wide, predatory smile. And then, the painted lips moved, and a voice, smooth as silk and dripping with malice, whispered from the canvas. "I want your body." Panic surged through Elora. She grabbed a palette knife from her workbench, its steel edge gleaming in the dim light. This had to end. She lunged at the canvas, driving the knife into the fabric. She tore downwards, ripping through the painted face. But the scream that followed wasn't from the painting. It was her own voice, raw and agonized, yet it seemed to be coming from somewhere else. From inside the canvas, the world tilted, spun, and went dark. When Elora came to, she was standing in her studio. Her hands were shaking. She saw the torn canvas on the floor. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong. She stumbled towards the large mirror she kept on the wall. She needed to see her own face, to ground herself. She looked up. The reflection that stared back wasn't hers. It was Annalise. The woman from the painting, with her cold eyes and cruel smile, was wearing Elora's clothes, standing in Elora's body. The reflection smiled, a slow, triumphant grin. Elora, the real Elora, let out a silent scream. She reached out with a trembling hand, but her fingers just met the cold, hard surface of the mirror. She was trapped on the other side. She looked down and saw her prison. Inside the torn, ruined canvas on the floor, a tiny painted face with wide, terrified eyes blinked back. Her face. She was trapped inside the painting. Weeks later, a trendy new art gallery opened downtown. The opening night was a huge success. Critics and collectors buzzed about the mysterious new artist who had appeared out of nowhere. An artist who looked remarkably like Elora Vance, but with a strange cold glimmer in her eye. And on the main wall hung a strange, unsettling portrait. It depicted a woman, her face a mask of pure terror, her eyes wide as if screaming for help. The plaque beneath it read, "Trapped by the artist Annalise." Most people just saw a powerful piece of art, but if you stood close enough, if you really listened, you could hear a faint, desperate whisper coming from the canvas. "Draw me. Let me out."